Subtle skills, big results.
Welcome to the Ninja Selling Podcast. Welcome back to the Ninja Selling Podcast. Matt and Garrett are back with you again. And if you are listening to this podcast and you're like, where is all of this coming from and what is this all about? Go check out ninjaselling.com. You can find out more information about Ninja there. You can also go check out the Facebook group. 16,000 people and growing in there, always growing. And we're grateful to have everybody in there. And go check that out. Lots of like-minded people like yourself. You can share ideas about the podcast, episodes you like. And I appreciate it. I love it so much, Matt, when people love on us over an episode they love, or something that resonated with them, and they go back to it and bring it into that group. That's what I intended that group to do, to help people kind of like dive deeper into the actual podcast episode. So thank you. And you can find that in there. But Matt, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning to you, man. I'm doing great. I'm caffeinated today after like 30 days of no coffee, really. I think I had coffee twice in the past 30 days. I picked that back up today because I had to make up for a little lack of quality sleep last night because I also had sugar for the first time in 30 days.
Yeah, okay, so Matt, just so we're all clear here, so Matt has been hardcore carnivore diet for the last 30 days.
Yep.
I'm so fascinated by this because he did a blood test before he started it, did the carnivore diet, and then did a blood test at the very end, like a great scientist that you are, which I love. And then you go right out and you have ice cream.
I know which wasn't the intention, but I'm a solo dad this week, and my kids are being so well behaved. I felt compelled to reward them with some ice cream, and we went out, and they're like, "Dad, do you want any?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And I immediately regretted it afterwards. But it is what it is. And
you told me, I'm like, "Good luck with your night's sleep, dude. See you later."
It was a wonder, and sleep was okay. To be honest, it wasn't terrible, but like there was a noticeable difference in the resting heart rate and just kind of the overall recovery phase of sleep that's tracked.
And you were craving caffeine this morning.
I was like, some sugar this morning would be delicious.
See, like you're spiraling. You're spiraling already. It's been like, what, a day and a half. Okay.
I had my steak and eggs this morning, so we're good. But I also went to the caffeine because my daughter did wake up at 4:45 this morning as well. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. We're getting off of a sidetrack.
I'm just happy you didn't go to the Fruit Loops. If you did that, I'd be like, man, you are way off track. You're just, okay.
Oh yeah. Well, how are you this morning, Garrett?
I'm amazing. And let's jump right in, because otherwise we could sit here and do what we're doing right now. Inventory, man. This is something that has been circling around. I've been watching it. Many of you don't know, I am not necessarily a stats guy, but one thing I got into years ago was the stats of absorption rates in inventory. And I did it when I was selling real estate. And it is one of those things that the reason I became a junkie about it was because I found it was a very simple way to make me an expert and make people go, this kid actually does his homework and knows what's going on.
Back when you were a kid.
I was a kid.
Just kidding. You're still a kid.
I was in my 20s selling real estate.
Yeah.
So with that being said, like what I found was that information was so valuable to me that I did it every month, did it by price range. I wanted to know all areas of my town, what was happening, inventory, absorption rate wise. What I do with a lot of people that I coach is those that will play with me, not everybody will do it, but I have some of them track their marketplaces, and we talk about it every month. Different marketplaces, different times that we've been in, it's more important than others. But in the last couple of months, I've had a lot of people start doing it again. And it is interesting to see how fast inventory is rising. And it's also really interesting, Matt, and this is where I think it's going to be fun to talk about this today. How many people go, oh, no, not our market. We still have really low inventory. I'm like, no. That's not what we're talking. It's not as easy to look from the outside and just go, we still have really low inventory, so it's not our area. You have got to do the numbers because the actual change is so kind of minute as it's changing, but it has massive implications in the actual results that are going on and what your results your clients are going to see as a buyer and what they have available to them and as a seller and what their competition is out there. And you got to know the little changes so that you can help educate these people properly. And I will say right up front, this is not everywhere. This is not like, we're seeing inventories rise across the United States. Every place has got its own fingerprint, its own personality right now, because I've got some going, whoa, we are in the teens when it comes to inventory, some luxury markets and higher price ranges. And then we've got some that they're like, we still can barely make an offer for a buyer that has any sort of thing that's in the buyer's favor. Like, we're having to give it all away still to be able to get a property. That's Wisconsin. It's all over the place. So, Matt, I'm excited to talk to you about this today because it's been an interesting conversation with the people that I'm coaching.
Yeah, same here too, actually. And you take a look at a market like Austin, Texas, which was the poster child for appreciation for the past decade and a half, really. I mean, because 2008, I think they saw a minus 0.1% in terms of their home prices, right? And then there's like, it was like, what recession for them? And they just accelerated.
It is a pretty cool place.
Yeah, but they accelerated all the way through until about last year, where they actually saw depreciation starting to happening from home prices, and now they're sitting on record inventory, depending on how you're comparing that record. By the way, how you're comparing always makes sense, and this is where in other markets, if we look at it's 2024, right, and we look at the COVID years as just yesterday, and it wasn't that long ago, but 21 when we saw this outrageously low inventory across the map. That was 3 years ago now. And so we're getting to the distance where headlines, articles, people are doing that comparison and going, oh my gosh, inventory has risen by 100% since 2021. Like
I love that stat. It's up 100%.
It's like, what does that mean comparatively? Because, and this is where like inventory as a number, we have to really understand, as you said, the absorption is the important part underneath it. And we're not going to go through all the science of the calculations because the beauty now is there's also a lot of great tools out there that do all this for you. But if you understand and can look at the changes in supply and demand, you can better prepare your buyers and sellers for what the market's going to be like. So you can position effectively if you're a listing, and you can negotiate effectively if you're a buyer and set those expectations. Because as inventory goes up, you have buyers go, well, we don't want to miss out on the new stuff coming on. And sellers looking at, what's going on there, they still want to capture as much value as they can out of their house when they sell. Like I was showing Garrett, I'm talking to the audience now, not talking to you, Garrett. I was showing Garrett the Charleston market. And if you look at a certain point in 21 versus where we are today in terms of number of homes, it's over 100% growth of inventory. It's like, oh my gosh, yet it's still multiple offers. Homes in my neighborhood are selling in days, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well then what does this inventory change really mean and how do we address it? And I think it's important to watch this stuff, Garrett, and talk about how do we position a listing using these absorption rate metrics, right?
Well, and I think that the positioning of a listing is funny because that's like come back around. There's a long time that we haven't had to have that discussion with those words specifically of how do we position this in the marketplace. And anytime you get more inventory, you got to look at like, okay, what stage of the line are we in? We're all queued up, and we're all queued up on with all these different parameters that say, okay, we get to put you in line here because of your location, your condition, your features and amenities. Like, well, that kind of puts you in this order, most likely, of how you're going to probably sell, how you're going to hit this marketplace. And we haven't had to do that in a while. We've been able to list, throw them on, have them sell, move away, move through, and just let's go find the next house. So that's one thing is positioning. The other thing we probably need to talk about, Matt, is you don't want all the listings out here. That's something that a lot of people don't understand. And it's a mindset that a lot of agents who have been in the business for the last 5 years have never even had to contemplate that I may not want to work with every opportunity that comes into my world. Because you might find yourself very quick going, oh my gosh, who did I take on here? What did I sign up for? I had a gentleman I worked with years ago, and he had a goal of having 14 listings. And this is back in, if I go back, we were right in that heart of about 2008, 2009. And I remember he got a hold of me and he's like, oh, I got 14 listings. And we're like, great. Like, that's where you wanted to get to. And you could just tell, he goes, I am stressed out. He goes, I haven't slept. Like, I can't think. And I was like, what's going on? Like, you got what you wanted. And he's like, none of these things are going to sell. Like, none of them. The homes aren't set up right. They're not priced right. Like, he was spiraling in this world of like, oh my gosh. And he ended up firing 7 of them after our phone call. He calls me up and he goes, I fired 7 of them. And I was like, oh my gosh, what did you do? But he had to do it. He had that moment of like, I wasn't prepared for this market that we were coming into. I wasn't thinking ahead far enough. I got excited about just taking more business, but I didn't stop and analyze, is that the business that really represents the business that I'm creating? Sometimes it is about being famous, and it is about the office walking around going like, Matt, look at Matt. Matt's got 50 listings. Like, way to go, dude. You are leading the chart in listings. Like, we are going to get you a plaque for most homes listed this year. Way to go, dude. And then there's some people that are like, I had 50 listings sell this year, and that's the plaque that I want.
Right.
And I think you need to get clear on what we're trying to accomplish. And I think we can dive a little bit deeper into this, Matt. But those are kind of the things as we start to know these numbers and we understand what we're up against, you can start making some different business decisions around the people we're working with and then how we're setting up in this marketplace. And showing is better than telling. So when we look at like gathering our data, gathering our information, we need to be able to sit down with somebody and say, look, this is what's going on right now. This is why I love knowing inventory levels. And I love knowing absorption rate levels. And Matt, I want to just kind of add this piece into it is like, the reason it's important to know the numbers is that you can have a lot of inventory hit the market, but if the market is absorbing it at a faster rate, the actual inventory levels month-wise still is very low. And that's an important thing to know because you can have a lot of inventory hit, but it's being absorbed faster. Numbers still stay low. You can have very little hit and you can have the actual absorption go through the roof. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, we can't sustain this for more than a week. And then vice versa, flip the other way around. All the inventory hits and the buyers drop down and you're like, we've got 50 months of inventory now.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to kind of know because when they both rise, that's when throws people off because everybody goes, oh, there's so much more inventory coming on. We're seeing it all the day. But if the buyers are right behind it, scooping it up, you still have a strong seller's market. So you've got to know your numbers.
Yeah. And it just helps you plan better and position better and also guide better because I agree. The inventory numbers, to me, inventory is by itself is a useless number.
Yep.
Like it just gives you, this is how many homes are available for sale at any given point at time, right? Because that number is pulled from a specific date. If you pull all the homes that were available over a period of time, that's going to have even less context because it's not highlighting how many homes went pending, how many homes sold, how many homes exited the market from that. And that's how you actually start to create your odds of selling, right? You take all the homes that were available over a period of time and divide that into the number of homes that sold. And there you have your odds of selling because some of those homes may have left the market. So today there could be less homes. Anyway,
those two numbers, odds of selling, Matt, that you just said, and days of inventory.
Yes.
The days that months of inventory. I guess days if we're going back to where we were, but months of inventory. So odds and months of inventory are the two numbers that when I look at if I want to understand the market, but you got to know your current inventory and the absorption rate to figure out what the actual months of inventory is. And that's the important number. And you just flip the equation to figure out the odds when you're dividing.
Yeah.
So if anybody goes, how do you figure out? Just divide the opposite direction. I'll tell you your odds.
Yeah. Just go the other way. And, this sounds complicated, so why do we even want to understand this? Well, this gets into the point of, if you can understand who your sellers are and who your buyers are and understand their goals, then you're going to have a better conversation with how they can achieve those goals. Because I know a lot of people, even because we're also seeing this happen, not just in localities, but also at price points and neighborhoods as well, right? So in some local markets, you might be like, hey, these homes are going crazy. These homes are not. And it's like, in the same city that is happening, like Washington, D.C. with condos versus single family detached, like totally different story in terms of how those markets are operating. And that is in the same city, right?
Price range is where the financing break is, Matt.
Yeah.
Where that threshold is that people will finance up to where it changes over to where people are like, I'm not financing that. I'm paying cash. I got enough cash that I can write the check for the $2 million house,
right?
Or whatever it is in your marketplace. There's a threshold in there where it changes from financing to paying cash for homes primarily. And that threshold, you're going to watch a huge shift of what inventory levels look like, what's happening. And it's not always what you think. And this is the crazy thing, because I've seen it here for the last 2 years. The cash market was just ripping in some of these higher end markets. And if you had to get the financing, that slowed down. Shifted here recently from what I've been watching, where all of a sudden the cash stuff has slowed down a little bit. People have become more comfortable with the financing numbers that they're seeing. They're not loving it, but at least it's not changing. It is kind of sitting. And all of a sudden we're seeing that start to pick up a little bit, and people are coming in as buyers and going, it's okay. I understand 8% right now or 7%. Like I can deal with that. I can stomach it.
Yeah. Well, and even if people have the cash, some people are saying, hey, I'd rather keep some cash reserves right now for me and pay the financing for a little bit. And once I'm more comfortable with maybe what's going on. I mean, this happens in election years, right? This is a presidential election year. People do some different things for whatever reason, even though historically, no matter who gets elected, the market just kind of goes back to what it was doing before the election. But I think the other thing that's interesting, Garrett, is what this gives you. The reason why we're saying you want to understand this is it helps you understand how to create a conversation around the opportunity for the goals your clients are looking to achieve. And what I mean by that is, if you have a seller saying, I want to sell this house. Well, if you could better have a conversation with, hey, let's take a look at this, your property that we're going to go on the market compared to what the buyer pool will look like. And this is how you start with absorption rate positioning, is not just what are the homes in the neighborhood doing? What are the homes in the price point? No, it's who is the buyer for this house and what are the other potential properties that they will be looking at. Let's make that the entire buyer pool, which will probably be bigger than what a geographic search might look like.
Yep.
Depending on the price range in particular, because some might be school district driven, some might be commute driven, some might be price range driven, in which case location may not make a difference, particularly if you have people looking for acreage. And then you can say, okay, what is the absorption rate in this buyer pool right here of listings? And let's make our listing the most attractive in terms of value, which price becomes one of your best drivers of that. But let's make it the most attractive when we also look at condition, size, location, and the features and amenities, because we can adjust those if we have the means to position better so we can be one of the properties that sells, even if absorption rate is going down or inventory is going up or both.
Well, and I think what you said there, Matt's really important, is that sometimes when you do a search or you do a market analysis for somebody, a lot of times when we're pulling that data together, we kind of do the surrounding areas, like right around them. We go, okay, this is what we're working with. When you're looking at it, as we talked about a ninja through the buyer's eyes, what happens here is that you've got, let's say it's like my mother and father-in-law, they've got a ranch here outside of town. So it's 100 acres, 116 acres. So you got this chunk of land. And if I was going to put that on the market, I'm not looking just at the surrounding properties around them to show them what's kind of going on. We have a wide net of 100-acre parcels all around us, all around Redding, California. There's tons of them. So as you start to put all these together and you look at it, there might be one completely on the other side of town. There might be another one actually about 15 miles south of us that we need to pull into this, because if anybody's coming in as a rancher looking for land and they want to buy a 100-acre plus parcel, they're not sitting there going like, I want to be close to the store downtown, or I want to be close to the hospital, or what. They're looking for land that they can put cattle on. And what is the accessibility? How does it work? What is my access to freeway? Getting people in and out, getting the cattle in and out when we got to make moves and things like that. It's an interesting thing that you got to look at who is the buyer for this property. Do they want an improved house on the property? Do they want a house that is a tear down because they're not going to live there? They just want to put cattle on it. Like, it changes all these dynamics where I don't want to look right around their property right there to say, these are what properties are selling for right now. And here's how we're going to put your home in the buyer's eyes. You got to go wider when you're positioning a house in a marketplace. Now, I use the 100 acres as an example because I always like it to prove a point when you go to extremes. Like, that makes sense when you're going to an extreme like that. A lot of times when we're looking at a 5-bedroom house in a neighborhood, we go, oh, it's a little bit more cookie cutter. Is it? And as you start to break it down and you start to really ask yourself, what are the special things about this house? Is it on a cul-de-sac? It is on a corner? Is it on a main street? Is it walking distance to the school? Is it walking distance to the hospital? Like, who is the profile buyer? Is it a 3-story house or is it a 1-level house? Who would buy this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And the house next door to me has a completely different profile buyer than my house. And just because my neighbor's right there and that's what that home sold for, when you start positioning homes, you're going to look at that and go, that house is never going to be used in the same way that Garrett Fry's house is being used right now or is going to be used in the future.
Yeah.
Two totally different buyers. Primary bedroom in this house is upstairs. Home next door, and that's what's a 5-bedroom house. Home next door, 3-bedroom house. All bedrooms on the main floor. Easy access all around. You got to know who your buyers are when you're positioning them. And these are the opportunities in this marketplace right now. And you got to know your numbers. You got to know your stats, and you got to be looking at it differently. And we haven't had to do this for a while. And there's a lot of you out there that have never even had to think about the marketplace the way we're talking about it. And it's time.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, like we haven't had to do it for a while, but these are the things that we should always be thinking about
doing
when we're listing homes in any market. And let's use an example. I'm not going to go with specifics of location and things like this, but this is a conversation I had with a client actually just this week. And it was about this particular neighborhood that usually has a certain amount of inventory, which is about double at the moment. And this person has multiple listings coming on in this neighborhood and said, well, let's talk about like, why is this neighborhood like this and everything? And it's generally a bit higher price point than the neighborhoods around it. And I said, okay, well, where are the buyers buying? Like, what about the neighborhoods around? And there's a neighborhood near this one that is selling at a faster rate, a little bit lower price point, doesn't have the same amenities as this neighborhood. And I said, well, the value equation is changing from the buyers, right? And we talked about it. And she said, yeah, it looks like buyers are going over there. And I said, that doesn't mean that we have to adjust price to match that neighborhood. We just need to adjust value and position in a way, because it's like the feedback from listings is people love the house. They love the neighborhood. It's just not for them. And I said, that's good feedback in knowing like, hey, quality is there. The problem right there is the price point for that buyer. And they're going into it knowing like, hey, this neighborhood's typically more expensive. So maybe we just can't afford it.
Yep.
And I said, let's make it affordable in some way, right? And this is where you can get creative in terms of what are the seller incentives that are being offered to maybe attract different buyers so that maybe you can protect quote unquote price point, but still bring a buyer who might be going to another neighborhood where there aren't incentives being offered because that neighborhood is quote selling faster. When you start to look at, oh, let me bring that neighborhood into this buyer pool and this landscape to really look at our position, and we see, hey, based on these 5 criterion, we're positioned up here. Whereas if we just reduce the price a little bit, it doesn't put us ahead of these in price, but it highlights all these other things that we're ahead on in value so that our total value puts us in the top 3 and we can maybe sell this month. And it is a subjective analysis when you do this. However, this is a conversation that I think can be had with a seller to help really understand, how do we get you to your goal? Because we can just comp to our neighborhood and sit around and wait to sell like everybody else, or we can comp to the buyer set and be positioned to sell so you can move on with your dreams.
And when you understand who the profile home buyer is, all of a sudden you can start doing things. As you said, how can we increase value? I've seen people do crazy things over the years to increase value to a house. And it's not necessarily something you have to do yourself. Now, some of these, as I'm saying this, might feel a little extreme where people are like, I'm not doing that, or that's not something I'm going to recommend because we don't need to do that yet. As I said, every marketplace is a little bit different. Know your marketplace, because we are seeing this change start to happen. I think we're going to see it continue to kind of move in this direction. Market changes are typically like a locomotive. To get it kind of rolling, sometimes it takes just kind of it's like, is it even moving yet? Like, I don't even feel like we're moving. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're moving. Like, we're going that direction. We're starting to see these changes happen. This is the reason we're sharing it, to get ahead of it. But I've seen incentives be like, we have this basement that's a cleaned out, nice looking basement. It's got carpet in it. It's been finished. It's all done. But it's like, for the profile buyer of this house, what if we offered $10,000 to outfit this thing in a movie room? And we just basically hung a thing down there, maybe a poster board of what this room could look like. And we have a credit specifically for this house, so that you can go down and pick out the furniture you want, the TV you want, all the, the sound system that you want, and you can turn this thing into an incredible movie room for you and your family. We want to make that part of what this home is as you're buying it. Now you've got this thing, whereas, inventory is coming up. People are thinking about, okay, we went out and saw 5 homes today. We went out and saw 7 homes. And in the back of their head, their brain's going, there's that one with the movie room. Like, there's that one that we get to do that. Like, wouldn't that be cool? And of course, their brain's also going, well, we could do that in any home. We could set that up in any home that has a basement. So really, it's like, it's nothing that far outside of the tangible for both properties, that one that's offering it to the one that's not. But this one's offering it. Like, this one, I'm going to get a check that I get to specifically use for that. I don't have to, like, tell my family, like, hey, do you think we could? It's like, no, we're supposed to. Like, we have to now. Like, I have to go buy the TV. I have to buy the couches. I have to buy, like,
yeah, it's built in. Sorry, guys, we must do this.
It's just what's done. It's just what it is. Like, I think, like, there's certain things like that we get to look at. I've seen throwing in a John Deere riding lawnmower because it's got a huge grass. I saw that years ago, and they're like, what can we do? And they had a big John Deere riding lawnmower with a bow on in the garage. It says, this comes with the house, brand new, never been used. This is what we're offering as an incentive to whoever the new buyer is. Those are little talking points that make people go like, woo, like, I've seen a Jaguar too. That was way back in the day.
That's cool. That's cool. And I will say, like, for those of you who have listings on the market, the great thing is you've had showings, hopefully. So you don't have to guess who the buyer pool is. Talk to the buyer agents, ask them a little bit more about those buyers,
great
of
point,
what
Matt.
They're willing to share. And if they've gone and purchased something else, hey, can you tell me where your buyers decided to end up purchasing? Would you mind sharing that information as best you can? Because then who's the buyer that's looking at this house and what are they actually buying? Because now you have a direct comparison of, like, hey, they liked our house. They didn't say anything was wrong with it, but they went and bought this house. Let's be objective now and look at what were the things, the features, the benefits, all the things of that house versus this one, and start to do our comparison to see what incentives might make sense to attract the next buyer. That's the beauty of if you have a listing already on the market.
And here's the cool thing about knowing your numbers. If you figure out and you get all the stuff together for who the profile home buyer is, you do your numbers and you figure out what the days of months of inventory are, what the absorption rates are. It was so great when I was selling real estate to be able to sit down with somebody and say, look, on average, over the last 6 months, 5 buyers every single month are going to take a home out of this pool, because that's how many buyers are entering the marketplace right now. And it's funny, you think it's like going to be sporadic and like 1 month we just have a lot, 1 month it's not the way it works. There's just kind of this pool of buyers that's always entering the marketplace, and it slowly and gradually changes to more or less, but it's not sporadic. It's not like 1 month a lot, 1 month none. Not the way it works. So if you understand that, you can sit with your seller and say, 5 are getting cleared out of here this month. We got 15 currently on the market. That tells me we got 3 months worth of inventory as we're sitting here right now. If we are not one of those 5 that sell, we move into the next month. New inventory comes on. We are still trying to vie for one of those 5 spots that are going to sell. And we're either going to continue on as inventory, or we're going to figure out how to be one of these 5. And those are the conversations you get to start to get into of, like, how do we make ourselves one of those 5 that's going to leave this market? Mm-hmm. It might be 3, it might be 15 that are going to leave the market. You don't know until you do your numbers and you sit down and you figure it all out, and you can sit down with your client and say, this is what we're watching. Even better is if you've been tracking it. This is what got me into starting this whole episode today and talking about this. If you've been tracking it right now, before it's necessary, before your marketplace looks like it's made the change, I can sit down with my seller and say, I've been tracking this for the last 8 months. Here's been the change that's been happening over those last 8 months. And by the way, here's what we're watching right now. And I used to ask them, if we continue on this trend, where do you think our months of inventory is going to be next month and the month after that? And because you have this data, they are like, it's going to be this and it's going to be that. Is that more in our favor of you selling, or is it less in our favor of you getting to where you want to go? It's less in our favor. Great. How do we want to approach this?
Yeah.
You can have the conversation. You got to know your stuff, though. And this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity as a professional in this marketplace, as a realtor. this is your opportunity in your hands right now.
It really is. And I want to add one nuance on the data and then also just kind of add in the buyer perspective on this too, because if you can tell whether the inventory is rising because of increased new listings or just listings staying on the market longer,
Yep.
you can better understand what new competition looks like in terms of your position. Is it like, because if it's just listings staying on the market a little longer, as an example, maybe patience is going to pay off, right? You just, okay, that one's going to leave, that one's going to leave, and then we're going to leave. If it's, there's a lot of new stuff coming on, then it's like, we just have to really be careful about our position because new people can come underneath us.
They cut in front of you.
They do. They cut in line and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
From a buyer perspective, this is also very powerful because you can use this to your negotiation skills as your advantage as a buyer's agent to go to a listing and you can look at the trends and say, hey, listen, here's our offer and here's why this is our offer. If we look at the trends, this is kind of where you guys are at. Our buyers love this house. They really want to buy it. And we want to help your seller to get where they want to be. And here's why we're making this offer. And if they look at the trends, now hopefully the listing agent presents all that stuff that you share if you can present it to the seller. We've talked about this before, but you make a compelling argument that like, hey, we are a great offer for you because our timing is so perfect for you. If you wait, here's the things that can happen. And that's much better than just saying, here's our number, here's our terms, take it or leave it, because now you're just creating a combative situation. Whereas if you use the data to your advantage, you're creating a collaborative situation, even though the numbers may not be what the seller is looking for or what they prefer. Ultimately, even though sellers will say number is the most important thing, it's not. The goal on the other side of that number is the most important thing. And so as a buyer's agent, thinking ahead to that, obviously, we've talked about asking the listing agent questions, getting all the information that you can to make a compelling offer with terms, but now using the absorption rate data and inventory to your advantage in your presentation to showcase why now is a great time to negotiate a deal so that you're not hanging out with this inventory over here as new stuff rolls in, as, hey, you know, in a few weeks, if we hang on to this negotiation, something else might come on that my buyers like, and they may move on if we're not willing to put a deal together today.
You tiptoed around something for a second there that I want to go back to, which is you said, you know, it might always be about this number that they want to get to, but there's a bigger thing behind the number, which is,
yeah.
And I will say that I've always been fascinated when people say they won't negotiate. It's just the number. That's what they want to sell it for. Take it or leave it. If they can't get that number, they're not selling. 9 times out of 10, what I find is that's somebody who's unclear about where they're going and the bigger why. They know they want to sell. They know they want to make a change. They know it's somewhere they want to go. But because nobody sat down and made it really clear and helped them dream and paint the picture, yeah, it's all about the number. That's the strongest thing they can fall back on, is it's all about the number that they can sell it for. So don't buy into that too much. Don't own that very much, because that just means they need someone to help them find clarity. Back to what you were saying with representing the buyer, Matt. I come from an era many days ago when I used to sell real estate that we did present all of our offers as a buyer's agent. That was my representation to my buyer, was I would physically go and sit down and present that offer and show it to the seller and the seller's agent. And I did bring those numbers. And I've sat with them saying, look, this is how the inventory is currently changing right now. These are your odds of selling currently right now. This is how it's changed month to month to month. I just wanted to share this with you so you knew what was happening in the marketplace. And more often than not, it was not a thing that someone would be like, oh, how dare you like show these things to my client because you're trying to like negotiate for your position. You're providing information that a lot of times that seller did not know how, the seller's agent did not know how to provide. They want the property to sell too. Everybody wants the property to sell. And when you provide correct information and you can show it, they all of a sudden, when you leave and you walk away, you're not saying you got to make a decision right now. When you're like, take all this, you guys do what you want with it and you go, they can now have an educated conversation of like, let's check and look at these numbers and make sure they're really right here. Like, is that real? Like, is that really what's going on? Let's take a look at that because maybe we should take this offer.
Think about how powerful that is. Like, I know some markets odds of selling is still like crazy high, right? Anytime you're over 80%, you're like looking great. Even a little lower than that, you can still be strong. But imagine presenting an offer where you're like, hey, listen, your odds of selling right now are about 60% based on broad market.
And
now
Matt, can I add something in? I'm sorry to interrupt you. A lot of people say, the odds of selling is 100%. It's the odds of selling in 30 days, is what it is.
Oh yeah, I mean you have to, and yeah, you got to look at a particular time frame here for sure.
Yeah, because I know people will go, oh no, we all of our properties sell.
All homes sell. It's like, well, in what time period, right?
In a 30-day time period, the odds of selling in a 30-day time period, that is your odds that you're trying to show somebody, so you can give them a sense of, in 30 days, what are your odds of this property moving off the market? It's really important because people get caught in the numbers and they get, yeah. So keep going. Sorry.
That's true. That's good. That's a very good point. And so imagine you're a buyer's agent, right? You're presenting this offer, even if it's just to the listing agent, and say, hey, listen, here's the data. You guys take this, you analyze it. But the way I see it here is your odds of selling in the next 30 days are about 60%. Now we feel like you're positioned fairly well, which is why we're, attracted to make an offer. But this offer is bringing you to 100% because our buyer's willing to make a deal with this seller. So you can go from 60% to 100% if we negotiate this out to acceptable terms for everyone. And we all know that ultimately everybody wants to be at that 100%. Like that's powerful. It's like, wait, and really every single offer is that exact presentation. But if you put it in that language with the data behind it, gosh, like if someone came to me and was like, hey, listen, Matt, this is where your house is positioned and everything. And I look at them like, gosh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like this offer is 100%. Now, obviously other terms, it doesn't mean you should take whatever it is, of course, but
yeah,
that's a strong way to start a negotiation in a way that is not offensive. Let's say, like, I wouldn't take offense to that. I'd just be like, okay, interesting.
So in today's market, with everything we've been talking about over past episodes, settlements, changes in buyer agreements and whatnot, being able to help represent your value to your clients, so they go like, what do I get with this buyer's agent? What does he do for me? What is Matt? Why do I even need to, sit here and talk about the fee that I need to pay Matt? Like, and I can have somebody else do it for less. These are the types of things when you sit down and say, let's talk about how I present an offer when we do present an offer. These are the facts that I bring to the table. This is the information that I do myself to make sure that I can help people understand why this offer is a powerful offer that we're submitting. Again, this is all stuff that backs up your value as a professional in this industry when we're talking about the buy side. So
no doubt.
Thought I'd throw that in there.
No doubt. Well, Garrett, I mean, anything else you want to add to this? This is pretty, I feel like we got pretty detailed there. I mean, if you guys want to really learn more about how to do these numbers, certainly look at the tools that you have. Focus First is an amazing tool for also running some of this stuff with odds of selling and understanding inventory and where it's going. You got to download out of your MLS and plug it in, but it gives you some good stuff. Most people's MLSs these days do have some pretty cool market tools that maybe you haven't explored, or you just got to look for those inventory numbers and the absorption rate numbers. And you might have to do some calculations on your own as well. Or you could go old school, Garrett, like you used to do, which is just literally track the numbers over time in your own spreadsheet so you can have your own numbers too.
Yeah, I did it by price range. And I'll keep this really short because I know we kept you all for about 40 minutes as of right now. But when I used to look at how I track it, I did it by how people search for properties by price range. So like I looked at like search ranges is what I did. So, if we were up in the 600 to 700, it was $100,000 swing is what it was. Because I looked at if somebody was qualifying for a loan, how much could they go up? How much could they go down and still feel like they're in their range? Lower, if we got below 300,000, I did it like in $50,000 or $25,000 increments down smaller. And then I did it by quadrants or areas of my town. It took me time to do it. I had to dedicate a couple hours a month over a certain day. It was just what I did. I sat down and started running all my numbers. There was something powerful that I found in doing the numbers myself. I knew they were accurate. I knew it was off my search. I knew I had those searches saved. I wasn't relying on somebody else. And I found the minute somebody else did the data, there's two things that happened. One is that I didn't take it serious until I had to go find it for a client, which means I was not educated all the way through. I only needed it when I needed it, not just me being smart about it. The second thing is that if for some reason they stopped doing it or they changed it or they started doing it differently and I didn't know, those numbers could look different and I didn't know why. And I've seen that happen where all of a sudden the search parameters will change on their end and all of a sudden the numbers are like, man, it got a whole lot better. Well, it was a different search that was actually done, but I don't know. I'm left in the dark here a little bit. So my thing with stuff like this is that we do get paid a lot. You guys get paid a lot to do what you do and to be a professional and to show up for your people. take the time to do the numbers. Take the time to hire somebody to do the numbers for you that you can sit down and do if you don't want to do them yourself. Like, it is part of being a professional in this industry and showing up for your people. And professionals get professional results every single time.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
That's all I got.
Well, I love it, Garrett. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode. We will definitely catch you on the next episode. And if you want to drop any likes or shares or reviews of the podcast, that is always very, very appreciated. But most importantly, head over to that Facebook group, The Ninja Selling Podcast. We love you guys very much. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you on the next episode.
Thank you, everybody. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like more, visit us at theninjasellingpodcast.com.
There you will also find links for more information about ninja selling and coaching. Have an incredible day.